Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our panel discussion. We'll be focusing on the credit union industry today. First off, I would like to congratulate everyone here and in the credit union industry for navigating successfully through what seems to be the peak of the COVID-19 storm. And there are so many unknowns, and it hasn't been easy, so congratulations. As we know, credit unions have completed the reopening process and we're getting ready to move into phase 2 of the governor's reopening plan. So today we're going to be focusing on the experiences of credit unions as they try to return to some form of normalcy during this whole reopening process. We'd also like to look at how the COVID-19 storm has changed the industry as a whole and what we can maybe expect moving forward. My name is Dave Brannon, and I am the Business Development Executive here at First Call Computer Solutions, and I'll be your moderator today. Oh, sorry about that. For those of you who are unfamiliar with First Call, we are a full resource technology company. We specialize in managed IT services, advanced cybersecurity services, network design and implementation, VoIP phone services, phone systems, and we also help small businesses with their websites. We have been in the IT world for over 23 years and we have over 40 IT professionals. Now I'd like to introduce our panel for today's discussion. Our first panelist is Danya Parrish. Danya, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background in the credit union industry.
Thanks, David. I'm Danya Parrish, and I am the Vice President of Risk Management with Montana's Credit Unions. So in that role, I've been supporting credit unions for 18 years across Montana. A lot of that is through the phone and via email with compliance support, resources, and training. I also get the privilege of managing both the compliance officers community and the directors community. So I work with boards of directors and do a weekly blog trying to keep them updated on what's going on in the world of credit unions, because many of them have other things that they do for their regular life. And so it's lots of fun to get to know all the credit unions. They all have a lot of differences and they all deal with a lot of the same issues. So I'm really blessed to be able to develop those relationships and be a resource for our credit unions.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to be here today. And Darcy, would you take some time to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background. Seems we're having a little internet issue.
Sure. I'm Darcy Parsons, and I am. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Okay. I am Darcy Parsons. I am the CEO of Ravalli County Federal Credit Union. I have been CEO for about 5 years. I have over 20 years of banking experience, most of that in lending. We have 2 branches. We just opened up a branch not too long ago in Lawrence. Our main branch is in Hamilton, Montana. And we closed our lobbies in March and we just reopened on May 7th. So we've had about 2 weeks of being reopened since COVID.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being here, and we appreciate your expertise on the subjects. Connor, would you like to introduce yourself and give your background in the industry?
You bet. I'm CEO of First Call Computer Solutions, 4th generation Montanan, and really I just enjoy technology, but I also enjoy lining it up with organizations. I'm super pro Montana, so anything I can do to help the industry, I'm all for it. So thanks.
Yeah, well, thank you, Connor. I appreciate you taking the time to help us out here. So today we're going to discuss COVID-19's effects on the workplace, how it's changing, as well as what to expect in the future. There's so much information out there, leaders need to simplify it. So we have put 5 keys together and we will have some discussion on what it means in practice. We will also address what's coming up both in the short and long term and actions that organizations will be able to take. Also, Connor will take some time to talk about technology and how it has helped facilitate this change. Now, before we start, I'd like to have both Danya and Darcy maybe give an overall state of what you guys are seeing in the credit union industry, what challenges you are facing, as well as any opportunities that you are seeing. How about
Great.
you go first, How about you go first, Tanya?
So with the last, I think we're into about 10 weeks now of this COVID impact. You know, when this first started, I think that there was definitely just an intense focus on what does this mean for members, and credit unions were really scrambling in terms of, you know, can we do this for our members? How can we help them? What do they need just to get through the day? And as we got into April, a lot of credit unions had in place amazing programs to extend loans, try to, you know, help people get their economic impact payments, and they put together special loan programs in terms of, you know, really just helping people get through the next few weeks. And I think that with our credit unions, one of the positives that's been part of this is that regulatory agencies oftentimes kind of have the parameters in place for the credit unions in terms of what they can and can't do. And a lot of that just went right out the window. And so I think one of the positives is that the credit unions have truly been given the right to just focus on member needs and not get hung up in the regulatory side of things. And, you know, what does a member need? And the recognition that credit unions are there to serve their members. And it's been really heartwarming to see a lot of the programs. As we've gotten into the last several weeks, there's been some shift more from that panic of how do we help the members to more of, you know, how do we help the businesses in our community survive? What do people really need for their lives and their livelihoods to be viable? And how do we support them in that? And we have credit unions that have done SBA loans, and credit unions that have been, you know, purchasing lunch and coffee and trying to support their local businesses. So really, I think we're at a point finally where I think we kind of see some light at the end of the tunnel, not just with the governor's directives, but also I think people are able to focus a little bit more clearly on where their community needs them, where their members need them. And in the middle of all of this, there's been a lot of employee stress. And the credit unions, I've just been so proud of them stepping up and supporting their teams through all of this. So that's kind of what's going on in general across the state. Some of them are opening, some of them have not quite opened their lobbies. They've found a lot of success with being able to push things to the electronic and to the drive-through. And from my perspective, I think that's been great. I think that's things they may have thought about and may have wanted to do, but this forced them kind of to jump into the deep end of the pool, and they're finding out that they swim pretty well. So I think that there can be some real positives with moving forward with trying to use those services more directly.
Okay. And Darcy, what are you seeing, you know, specifically, well, overall in the industry, but also specifically with Ravalli County Federal Credit Union?
Well, I think, you know, and Danya, she spoke on as to really what all of us as credit unions, what we've all been doing and living. And of course, the same thing, you know, when this started to happen, we all started to really worry, of course, how are our members, how are they going to react? Where are they going to be? I think that COVID's going to be a really long-term event to where we're not going to see, you know, the effects of this even for a couple of months. I know right now we have so many members who are on unemployment, and that those benefits they're receiving more than they, you know, because they've increased the benefits for members who aren't working. And so I feel as those unemployment, you know, checks as they run out is when we're really going to see the wave of delinquencies, and we need to be there for our members to help them when that time comes, or if they can't find jobs, how we can help to support them through that time frame. I think my credit union as a whole, that it's been very challenging. There's been a lot, of course, you know, even with HR, that's been a lot of all of the changes with the FFCRA and the CARES Act and different things that I've implemented here, that's been challenging for me. And then also our local economy, that we were one of the credit unions that we started buying lunch for only local restaurants for staff 2 days a week, while they could only do delivery or pickup. And I think that was good. It was also good for staff morale, just because they also, you know, they feel part of it, that we're helping our community. I think that, you know, the opportunity that comes through all of this, again, is to where we can check our systems. You know, Danya had talked a little bit about where we got to check, you know, to see, can we do this? Can we work remotely? I know for me, it was very eye-opening because we had a disaster recover policy, but there was a lot lacking in our disaster recovery policy, which the pandemic goes right hand in hand with that. So, you know, we've done a lot of testing to where even, you know, and I'll say this right now, we are customers of First Call. So, and we did a new phone system with them last year, and that was a godsend because we also have an Allworks Reach app, which is great. So we can work out of the office and feel no difference than being in the office. We never had that capability before last year, so we've got to test that. We've got to work remotely and see how that all works. So we've learned a lot through this, and I think that that opportunity that it's made us a stronger team. It's made us a better team. We are not always together, but we still work well together, and that we can still provide for our members even in times of trouble. So
If I could just recap a couple things. One, and I've heard this from lots of different industries, relationships between, you know, the organization and your members, or organizations and their clients, have gone to another level, you know, that didn't exist before. You know, that trust is stronger than it used to be, that awareness, and really that reality of you're there to help, you know, is taken on strong. You know, obviously lots of moving parts and flexibility, and it sounds like both the association and your credit union has been able, you know, to flex well with that. And then there's still concerns, you know, about what's coming down the pike, you know, both in terms of monetary concerns, you know, as well as staff concerns and employee concerns.
mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and from our perspective at the association, we had started some peer communities about a year and a half ago, and we've really been engaging people with those communities over the last couple months and holding weekly calls with the CEOs. And I think that those peers are really connecting well with each other and realizing everybody's busy and everybody needs to focus. So how can we help each other? How can we support each other without everybody reinventing the wheel? And we've definitely seen a lot of strength in those peer relationships, and I do think that's a huge positive that's going to continue.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's move forward to, there we go. Now with the credit union, credit unions obviously have a lot of different functions, but many of those functions have changed due to COVID. You know, maybe we could go through some of the, you know, things that have changed and things that have become more of an issue for credit unions.
Would you guys maybe just hit list this real quick, talk, you know, just briefly about what each one is and kind of what you're dealing with as you move into normalization and you know, going forward?
You want to start, Darcy?
Sure. So I'll just kind of go through the list first. Deposit operations, that is, and I know all of us as credit unions, because we've had the CEO calls, we've all been talking about it, is managing all of the deposits that we have received in. You know, any time of turbulence, basically members, they kind of hunker down and they want their money to be safe. So I know for us here personally, we have a lot of liquidity, and that's something that we're managing. We have lots of deposits that have come into the credit union. Fraud prevention, there is a ton of fraud right now as well, which is always scary during these time frames. But anytime that there's, you know, stimulus money to be had, the fraudsters are on top of it, and they always seem to be like they're one step ahead, which is unfortunate. And then
just another note on that too is that seems to be across lots of industries. You know, the number of electronic attacks, cyber attacks, you know, phishing, you know, faking. You know, we've had a situation where you know, somebody's contacted us and you know, engaged in our sales process and said they were deaf. And working through that process, and then, you know, you get through it and you find out, okay, they want connections, to set up their account, and it's universal, unbelievable.
Yeah, it is, and it's always something like we should know, but you just don't ever know. That's the other thing too, and especially with the stimulus checks and everything that's been coming in, that's all brand new. So we don't know which avenue they're going to try to hit. So that's been a big one right now. Regulations and compliance, that's another thing. I will say NCUA, I think they've been very, very helpful through this. They have really backed off on a lot of regulation, which is not always typical, again, during a time frame like this, but they've been very helpful. They've been very understanding. They've said work with your membership, which has been fantastic, to where we can give longer modifications for members as long as we're documenting it. They're saying help your member, don't worry about running it as a troubled debt restructure, which is huge for all of us because there was so much compliance that goes into it. A lot
Was
of the
that
regulation
kind of a
compliance
mental shift was that a mental shift for you and your members?
Yes.
I can imagine being in a regulated world where you're constantly told you need to do it this way. How has your staff kind of changed through that?
Well, I think that's the thing that's funny about it, because we all talk about it and we're like, can we get that in writing, please? Because we've all lived through the recession, and they will say, oh no, do this now. But then, we might see them in a year and get written up for these same things that they said was okay. So I think all of us are a little bit, leery of that loosening regulation because we haven't had it.
Right.
So, but they have been, and I hope that's the case. I hope when we start to see them, when they come in to do our exams, that's being accurate. And so we'll see. But thus far, they're telling us, don't worry about it, just work with your members, which has been very good.
Well, I can tell you that they are not saying that to the IT people. They're not saying lean off. We were critical infrastructure, are critical infrastructure workers, and definitely the regulators have not been saying, what, just take a break on that firewall for a while. That's not happening.
Well, that's probably good. I'm glad they're not telling you to take a break.
Yeah, I'm not sending the same message to my staff. Just take care of people.
Yeah, exactly. Branch and online services, that is something that's been, I think, really good. I know for us, when I was looking at our numbers, we only had about 20% of our membership who was using all of our online services, which is a horrible, horrible number. So I think that COVID for us, a little bit, if you're going to take away a positive from it, was that we did close our lobbies and our members did have to use alternate means. And I'm hoping that after they tried, online banking, or they tried remote deposit capture, or they tried our mobile app, that is something that they'll still use in the future and won't just come back to the lobbies.
Well, I would assume that after they've used it and seen that it's a little easier than they thought, that they're going to utilize it.
I agree. I agree. I'm always shocked. We have members who call every single day, what's my balance? And that's it. That's all they want to know is what their balance is. But they might call 3 times a day to know what their balance is. And I'm always shocked that they just, and I always remind them, if I answer the phone, we have a wonderful mobile app and you can
I was going to say,
money,
I bet your app usage is way up.
Well, and I haven't checked numbers on that to see where we're at, but I hope so too. And from again, now that we've opened our doors and we haven't had as much traffic in, I am assuming that they are using those other means, because we were not, there was not a huge amount of members in the office. So
the apps are great.
A number of technology association groups, and kind of the theme that's been going on through those is we've moved into a new era in our industry where now basically they're calling it the dependence era, because the rate of adoption has picked up on technology in so many different industries so quickly in the last 60 days, that it's like, okay, this is not going to go back the other way, and we really need to continue to build infrastructure, that can achieve the highest level, because people are just going to continue to depend on it more. Would you say that's fair?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Well, what about staff?
I was just going to say, obviously, staff's an issue with everybody. You want staff to
Yeah.
feel safe, and also the
Yes.
people that come in, you want them to feel safe. So,
Mhm.
maybe speak a little bit on that.
Well, and that is, that's always the big concern, and that was, of course, a big concern when we reopened our lobbies. When we closed our lobbies, I think I'm also maybe one of the only credit unions. Most of our staff stayed here. I had a couple of people work remotely during the COVID, where we had, but usually it was typically 1 to 2 people out of the office, and that was it. Almost everybody else was here. And it was always, a huge concern, and you have to have all of those conversations with your staff of, I love you guys, you have to be safe. I love you guys, you can't travel. I love you guys, if you do travel, you have to quarantine for 14 days when you get back, and you have to be honest with me. I mean, I love you guys, you have to start filling out a health screening questionnaire to make sure that you're feeling okay, and I'm going to take your temperature every day.
Yeah.
So for them, it's been a huge learning curve too, where it's not just you're coming to work and you have to be thinking about everybody else that you're
Others.
around. And that's a huge shift. And then also on the flip side of that, they also have to feel comfortable telling our members if they come in and they're visibly ill that they can't be here. They have to leave. We will not give any services. We're really sorry, but they can't come in here. I was talking to one of my employees this the other day, and she was telling me she had someone in her office who was sniffling and coughing, and I'm like, did you tell them to leave? And she said, no. And I said, you have to. They can't be here. But it's such a shift to everything we've ever done that it's hard to remember that we should be doing those things.
Right.
And I think there's an employer mentality, or I mean, as it to you've got to switch it, where instead of
Yes.
feeling like you're letting your employer down by not coming in sick, you're actually doing them a favor.
Exactly. One of our staff came in yesterday, and she was ill. She was throwing up, and she came in with her mask on and said, well, it's not on the symptom list. I'm not coughing. I don't have a fever.
Yeah, we're going to ask you to go.
Yeah.
That would be any time I wouldn't ask you to stay. So
Well, and there's
it's a
just some of that
shift.
with that Montana mentality too.
It
Yes.
really
You
is.
got a job to do, you do it.
You're not sick
Exactly.
unless you're
Definitely a fine
in the
line.
hospital.
Yeah.
Well, and we can't
I
forget
know.
on the staff side of things that there's a lot of staff across the state who were home trying to help their kids with school
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
while trying to do their jobs, so there was a lot of interruption with childcare and school facilities that's impacting credit union employees too.
Yes. I have a couple of employees who are still, they're not home full time, but they're taking time every day to stay home to homeschool their kids.
Yeah, I mean, that stuff became a huge issue for a lot of people, and many employers have had to become flexible with that. So,
And that hasn't normalized yet. What about call
No.
center?
yeah, I would imagine call centers our usage is way up
Mm-hmm.
due to
And
questions.
we never had a call center prior to this, but we implemented a call center to assist. And typically they're really in the background for us personally. I'm sure everybody else is a little bit different. We have them kind of in the background if something did happen, if I do have staff, if somebody did get ill here and passed around the office and we were out of the office, call center can pick up and take over. And the same thing, if again for disaster recovery, they're just kind of in the background waiting for that.
Okay.
I think the commercial and consumer I think that was just, those are
Well,
just
my
things that we've
question
helped with.
on there, Darcy, is, with
Yeah.
your business side of things and your business customers, obviously you've had to answer lots of questions, for them on that standpoint. And usually with, that relationship, that's a very face-to-face, personal type of thing. So imagine there's been changes there. And then same thing on the consumers, probably a little bit of pullback in terms of borrowing and that kind of stuff right now.
Yes.
And same thing, it's like you get to know, your credit union members and that relationship, and that's what you're used to. But any flexing you've had to do on those two fronts?
We've done quite a few loan modifications for both. Commercial, not so much. Most of our commercial members that I've talked to, they seem to be, most of them seem to be weathering it pretty well, which is good because I know that they've all been hit directly. But I've been having ongoing conversations with them, you know, and it's more like, call me next month. Let me know how things are going next
Right.
month. If we need to
Right.
do something, then we sure can. But let's, you know, they're kind of in the same ballpark. They're like, let's just get through the next 30 days and see what's
Yeah,
going to happen.
30 days at a time.
Yep, that's
Yes.
pretty common right now.
And I think the same with consumer too. I am looking, we are going to run a summer loan promotion, which I really kind of went back and forth on if I should do it. But people still need to buy cars. People, I'm sure at this time, are also thinking about RVs because they might want to be out camping. So I did decide to continue with the summer loan promotion, even if, and I'm not expecting to have used the normal amount of people in for loans, but I am still running it because we do need to do some loans, and we, you know, our liquidity is very high. We have a lot going out in investments, but I would like to try to get as much out in loans as possible this summer.
Well, just a quick update for your members on that. We do a number of different recreational dealerships, the motorcycles, RVs, campers, boats across the state. And there's literally concern right now that they're going to run out of inventory.
Wow.
So it's not a bad
I'm glad
time
I'm
to
doing a
be
summer loan promotion, Connor.
in the freedom business.
Yeah.
You know, there was
Seek higher ground.
There was a report in the Wall Street Journal, and then I heard from a friend too that wanted to buy a bike for his wife, and he had to go to Bozeman to find a bike because Missoula, you know, was sold out. And then the Wall Street Journal the next day said basically bike, you know, just pedal bikes. There's no inventory anymore. Like it has sold that fast. So I think there's going to be a fair amount of demand here in the short term, and we all know how short Montana summers are too.
Yeah.
You know, to buy some freedom.
And Danya, do you? I mean, we don't need to obviously go over things, but do you see anything you needed to add to any of this that you're seeing
I'll just
on
touch on a
overall in the
couple of
industry?
them. You know, I think this last 10 weeks has been nothing if not information overload. You know, Darcy mentioned NCUA, who's our federal regulator, and they insure most of our state charter credit unions too. They've been great, and we've had all of these industries that have been doing a really wonderful job, but everything they do is emails. And so you get an email and then it's like, okay, you can do this now. And now we've made a change to this and we've added flexibility here. So we've all been drinking from this information fire hose. And so one of the things I've been spending a lot of time doing is trying to synthesize some of that information to a website and then steer people to the website. And with our association, we've actually added an additional newsletter every week because there's so much information. But we've also pulled back on, I would say, regular communication, and we're trying to really help people focus on just things that are COVID related. But you know, there's been a lot of training information available for staff, so people that were working from home could do webinars that a lot of our partners were providing. And you know, I think that they've found a lot of value in that, but I do think that there'll be some shift back to normalization. But you know, I feel bad for people like Darcy because honestly, their inboxes are so full every day. Because the changes and the loosening of regulation is great, but it doesn't just happen with a snap of a finger. It's an email and then another email and then a change of a policy and here's a sample policy, and you know, it's just all of these steps. So definitely impacts a lot of these
That's
areas.
a good segue to this next slide, I think.
Yes, it is. We have, let's go, the 5 keys. So now that we have the functions identified, I think it's important to simplify this as leaders. Number 1, work is still work. You know, if you've had consumer services before, you'll still have them now. The norms have changed. You know, organizations have to also constitute distancing and cleanliness. And given the new norms, you know, we need to figure out how to work best as a team. So speaking on that, Most credit unions have a handle on distancing. Same goes for cleanliness. What we need to focus on is teamwork and what it looks like specific to these functions. Darcy, given the norms of change, talk to us about this notion of teamwork and both the friction that you are experiencing as well as possibly the opportunity that you're seeing.
I think with teamwork, the thing that has really come out of all of this is just communication. I know for me, and especially for staff, that's been a huge thing, and it's good. It comes both ways. Where I think a lot of times, even my staff sometimes, and it's funny because I never have once thought of myself as intimidating or scary, but then I'll hear, oh well, I'm not going to go ask Darcy this, and I'm like, well, why? But I think that's what's been good about this, because it's really been an open dialogue with a lot of from my staff asking me questions like, well, what's going on? Do we need to worry about being laid off? All of those questions. And it's good for them to ask those things, because in my mind, I was thinking, well, no, I'm not laying anybody off. We're very healthy. But that was a concern of them. And I didn't even think that should be a concern, because I thought that I had communicated that, but evidently I hadn't done a good enough job. So I think where all of this has come about is checking in and talking to them, telling them what we're doing, sharing the information. The other things that have kind of come about, I know a lot of our benefits from health insurance it's been very good. There's a lot of support for people if they're having mental as well as physical issues, which is good. But just sharing that, being there for them, letting them know about the other resources that are available for them now, like some of my moms who are home and doing homeschooling, that they have additional time, so they don't have to worry about using all of their sick and vacation time, because they have additional time that was implemented under the FFCRA Act. So those are all things that have been really good for me and my staff. I'm not going to say that it's easy, because it's not. I know there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of stress for me. There's a lot of stress for them. There's a lot of stress for their children and for their spouses. And just, reminding everybody to be kind to each other, because we spend more time with each other than we do our families. So that's the biggest things I think that I can say about the teamwork side.
Yeah, there's lots of that emotional element, and having that be a positive experience, that you went through with your team, will pay dividends in terms of the workplace and the outputs, for years to come.
Mm-hmm.
What about on the operational side of things? I mean, we're used to, if we have a question, walking into somebody's office, or having that proximity. Danya, you mentioned, the inbox overload and the information overload. How has your staff done with those types of transitions, to deal both with that? I can't just go walk into Darcy's office, or, how do I cut this inbox down? Anything from either of you on that side of things?
Well, I'll just say, from the perspective, it was probably about day 3 of our staff all working remotely, so still mid-March, and we had an email conversation, and I won't call it a directive, but it was more just an awareness from our leadership that said, hey, we're hearing that people are just being inundated with information. Let's keep anything we send to only what we need to. Let's not, not that I would call anything we do fluff, but more of an awareness that we need to be very conscientious how stressed and busy they are on the other end, and how can we tailor what we're doing so we're not just adding to that.
Right.
So
Limit
the
fear.
Yeah, and so we had a real focus on that.
To me, there's been a big return to the phone. So it's so easy to write an email and send anything, and again, it just can become overwhelming. And for a while, people were talking about, people are just going to text and people will just email, and that's how it's going to go. And to me, I've seen a lot of return to true conversation, and picking up the phone and having just that all right, this is the topic, let's get through it. Have you guys seen that within the credit unions and amongst association members?
I don't know that we've seen an increase in phone calls, partly because I think people know we're working remotely, and we certainly all have our mobile phones. I will tell you, one of the things we've seen is I think a lot of our credit unions realize that they need to keep morale up, and so they've been doing some really fun things for their staff. They've been doing some fun things to send out to the members, like, hey, we're okay, we're doing all right here, we're still here to serve you. But some of them have put together some videos, and they've done some internal competitions and games.
Right.
And so just trying to keep that personal aspect up. And even with our own team, we're doing an extra weekly check-in that's not business, it's just personal. How you doing, what's going on, what movies are you watching, what's the latest on the Tiger King, important things. So
right.
Anything but work.
Yeah, it's helping us build that relationship further in terms of being co-workers and being co-supporters to our credit unions.
And Darcy, how are you keeping morale up at your location?
Well, I'm not doing anything that fun, Danya. That's a hard act to follow, evidently. I need to be doing more. I don't, my staff, I think we've always been very tight knit, no matter what. And they know, because I tell them frequently, I do love them, and we still do have an open door policy, and it is a little bit different for me because I have been here. I've only worked from home for 1 week.
That seems to be pretty the case across banks and credit unions.
I did work remote, and I only did the 1 week because my son was exposed to somebody with COVID and he had been home. So my husband and I we stayed home, and when the time frame when we needed to, we were both fine. But otherwise I've been here. So it hasn't been, I don't think that I've had to come up and do some of those different things because we've all just been here. So.
Right.
Okay, perfect. Well, let's speak next on phases. I wanted to ask each panelist what actions they think need to be taken in the next 30 to 60 days. Why don't you speak first, Danya?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, some of our credit unions are still working to open their lobbies. They're still rotating some of their staff, so not everybody's in the office at the same time. I think that at this point, some of our credit unions need to start looking to their strategic plan and their business plan for 2019 and decide, what is in here that we can still do, what has been completely blown up and needs to be just thrown away, and, where's our opportunity? As Darcy mentioned, for a lot of them, their deposits are up, their lending is down. Is that going to continue for the remainder of the year? Do they need to make some adjustments? So I think this next 30 to 60 days, I think people really see that they can get back to some sort of normalcy and start to focus again on the future.
Okay. Well, there's operational, technical, and emotional aspects to all of that. Darcy, what actions are you going to be personally taking in the next 30 to 60 days at your credit union? I think we're having a little.
I think she might be having a little internet connection.
See, it's coming. Let's give it a second here. It looks like she might be coming back.
While we're waiting for Darcy, Donnie, what about longer term?
Yeah, what do you see happening beyond 30 to 60 days?
Yeah, so longer term, I mentioned, I think, my hope is that credit unions will be allowed to continue this focus on members and move away from some of that regulatory burden. I also think that, they've really, as I mentioned, some of those relationships have been strengthened and deepened. I think members are incredibly appreciative of the support they've gotten from their credit unions, and that will help them build those relationships going forward. I think that many of us are still in the mode of trying to decide, with meetings, how are those going to look in the future? And we think that there's a strong possibility that even if we're doing in-person meetings, they might have a remote component to them. Maybe we'll have a speaker who's talking to us from out of state and not actually traveling in. So I think while we've been afforded that flexibility, we're going to take advantage of some of what we've seen work. I thought Darcy might be back, so.
I thought, yeah, it looked like he was.
Oh, there you go, Darcy.
There you are.
I think I am back. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to speak on what you're going to be personally doing in the next 30 to 60 days? Danya was also speaking about how things are going to change overall with meetings, things like that. What do you see changing at your credit union specifically?
Oh, I don't, I was thinking a lot about this in the next 30 to 60 days. And I think so much of it is just we're still at the mercy of what's going to happen. It's hard for me to say in the next 30 to 60 days what we're going to be doing. I mean, I'm planning for a summer loan promotion. I'm next week I'm gonna stop travel restrictions for my staff. And I think after those things are, basically in place, I think then we just have to see what's going to happen. And I feel like that's every time that I start to make a plan or something else comes up. So I am having a really hard time addressing, where I'm going to be in the next 30 to 60 days, because I just feel like no
Right.
matter what happens,
Everybody's got to watch the
preparing and then something
unemployment
changes.
numbers. Everybody's got to watch the
Yes.
COVID numbers, all of those types.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And that dictates, that immediate need. So it's hard to have any long-term planning for me right at this moment.
Right.
Just because I feel like I'm just in a reaction stage. That's all that I am, is reacting right now.
And I would imagine too that, this regulatory loosening, is not going to be a permanent fixture. There might be some shifts, but that changing kind of behaviors back to, okay, we've got, we need to have more controls in place, and those types of things, will normalize too.
Well, and I'll mention too that, we're realizing for a lot of our credit union staff that this environment that we're in and the news and the unknown is creating a lot of emotional stress. And so we've been working to get out some resources and some mental health support. And, to be honest, I hope that maybe people will continue to realize that people have challenges in their daily life, whether it's your coworker or the member who's come in. We just don't always know what people have going on, and any way that we can support them and be where they need us to be is helpful.
I think mental health support is going to be a huge issue moving forward for a lot of companies providing it for their employees, because I think that a lot of that was displayed during this quarantine time.
Let's move on to the tactical side of different organizations found themselves in different places, regarding their technology. And so one of the things that we've been working with organizations on is, do we want to continue to react from a technical standpoint, or can we leverage kind of this new frame of reference? All of the things that we've learned in the credit union industry about members and their adoption of technology. If you're like Darcy and you've got multiple branches, having to already have technology in place that can deal with different people in different places. And so to me, it really does start up at the leadership level. And that doesn't mean that you have to have this perfect, beautiful plan, on where you're going from a technology standpoint. But you do have to begin to take what you've learned in the last 45 to 60 days and begin to assess where you're at and how you can improve the organization, both in terms of your inner staff workings, as well as, the services that you're providing to your members. So having that general vision and plan, and then obviously everybody's got to have commitment to it. And a lot of what we've found with the credit unions is, there's been kind of disparaging different points of view around where we should go with technology. You know, as you guys know, you've got trustees and board members that have come from different generations, work in different industries, and may not see technology the same way that people that actually have to do the job see it. You know, I would imagine that this has reduced that gap. Would that be fair to say?
Mm-hmm.
So I think with
Yes.
that, there's an opportunity, you know, for the leadership, the CEOs of credit unions, the COOs, the risk management officers, you know, to come together and say, okay, here's where we are. We've learned a lot. We know what was kind of painful. But I think the other thing that leaders are wondering about is, you know, what don't they know? And so on that next piece, it says data and voice flexibility. And there's a lot of talk in lots of industries about remote work. And I try and quash that. You know, to me, it's not where you want to head. It's not where anybody wants to head. Where people need to be focused on is simply flexible work, being able to work securely and productively, you know, from the places that you are. Darcy talked a little bit about that with, you know, some of the phone system technology that we've put in place. And then there's this Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Teams and things along those lines. And for many people, that's still a buzzword. So I think it's important that leaders get a handle on what that technology is, how it can reduce your inbox, how it can create better meetings, how it can help you collaborate and change your workflow around files and information, as well as hit all the regulatory compliance types of needs. Because when you begin to shift your technology, you also have to make sure as a credit union, you're staying on top of the compliance components associated with that. So really encourage members not to think so much in terms of remote work and that buzzword, but more think about, you know, flexible work and how to make that happen. And to do it with all the same things that you guys mentioned. Less clutter in the email box, better connections with people, the ability to not just have something so formal as correspondence, but chat and, you know, being able to do a quick video call informally and connect with people that way. Lots of benefits there. The next thing is just cybersecurity and backups. When you begin to change your technology, you also need to make sure that the cybersecurity is in place and the backups are in place as you move things around. So one of the things that I think a lot of us as leaders in credit unions fear is the cost associated, especially with cybersecurity. And that's been true for, you know, decades. But more and more, that cost is coming down as it becomes more mainstream and the threat becomes more universal. And so if you don't have a good vision and plan around cybersecurity and what to do with that from a budget standpoint, I think that's an important task to take on too in the next 30 to 60 days. And then the last one is workforce development. We see it all the time where people will buy the tool, but they don't train people how to use it. And then the other thing is they oftentimes try and train people how they think they should use it versus helping them kind of get those aha moments of, just like with your consumers and mobile banking. It's like, I'll just call 3 times a day. And then all of a sudden it's like, I have to use this. It's like, oh, I can check my balance real time anytime I want. It's a little bit of serotonin that goes off that makes people want to keep doing that. And if you do technology coaching correctly, you really end up with kind of that aha moment too, where people begin to want to use it. So really encourage, you know, the leadership folks at credit unions to be thinking about rethinking their plans, you know, not just around operations and employee care, but also around, you know, the overall technology landscape.
Hold on, I'm having problems with the screen here. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, it looks like you're back and happy.
Oh, am I?
Yeah, Connor, I was going to mention I was on a meeting yesterday. A guy from Microsoft was doing an overview of Teams, and he made a comment that made me feel like one of those old generation saying, you know, we've always done it this way. He made the comment that we have generations that may be coming into the workforce that we may need to teach how to do email because they've grown up with only, you know, using these apps and chats. And it was kind of a fascinating aha moment for me because email has been such a huge focus of my professional life.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, to give you an example, 5 years ago, you know, you come into work, you open up your email inbox, and you start to go through your email. That's what you do. You know, now, honestly, emails 4 or 5 on that list, and it's, you know, it used to be a list of 100 emails. You know, now it's 4 or 5. And it's very different, you know, for me, you know, being in IT for 25 years, but that shift has certainly happened.
And Connor, we do have a question from the audience. We have a trustee on the call, and they say they lean towards more the cautious side is in regards to making decisions. What would you recommend as far as bridging that gap for modernizing and changing?
I think those aha type of moments, you know, we all have a brand new frame of reference now. And so we're more open to the conversation, you know, than we once were. And if you can really take, you know, one of the things we do for our clients is basically set up a virtual environment for them and connect with their people. And you just play pretend for a couple hours. How do you do this? And then show them how it could be done. And then bring in some of those other security benefits that come from it as well. And that, you know, 2-hour type of experience kind of helps close the gap between buzzwords and the potential fear of change that we all have to, oh, well, that's not so bad. And, you know, we could do that. And I could really see the benefit of that, not only here, but maybe over here, the way we do things. So like anything else, change is hard, but I think now everybody's aware of more aware of what change looks like. You just kind of got to dive a little deeper now into really considering it.
Okay, let's do a review of the key points today. Basically, we know that work is still work. The credit unions have been open for a while. We realize that the norms have changed. There's going to be distance involved, cleanliness, new approaches to teamwork. We need to embrace challenge and change, operational, technical, and emotional. We also need to stay connected, people, industry, and market.
Could I just make one more
sorry
comment
about that. Yeah, I was just going to
embracing
say,
challenge and change? Because we deal with so many industries, the credit union is a neat one in that you've got CEOs, you know, that are connecting together every week, you know, through this thing and sharing pains, problems, and opportunities. A lot of industries struggle with that, you know, because of the potential competition and things along those lines. And so, you know, they've been way more siloed, you know, than you guys have. So I just, again, really want to compliment your industry for the way that you have worked together, you know, to overcome things. It's a very neat thing and something that you should be proud of.
We call it co-opetition.
Yeah.
And we really think that
Great
it's one
attitude.
of the hidden gems of this industry. And people that come in from other industries are always shocked how much credit unions are willing to help each other. But at the end of the day, they all care about their members' success. So if they need to share a policy or an employee or a building, whatever it needs to be, there's a lot of willingness to do that.
Yeah, super neat, and I am sure it's a huge part of why you've been able to do as well as you have, you know, through this thing. So
I think so.
and next we are going to move on to questions and answers. I think we have a couple questions from the audience. I do have a question myself personally. I'd like to ask for Darcy. I just want to know how you are preparing for phase 2. We know phase 2 is starting June 1st. I want to know what, you know, kind of how how you're approaching that. Are you gonna be changing from what's
Yeah,
happening right
does
now?
it change anything, or just really kind of amongst some of your members?
It's not going to change much for me. I was just kind of talking with staff about it. We're going to have a staff meeting on the 3rd, just kind of going over it. The only thing that's really going to change is I'm removing travel restrictions to be in line with the governor's directive. So
Sure.
staff will be able, if they want to go out of state, they can, and they don't have to quarantine. I am going to keep in place 10 members in the lobby at a time, just because that it makes me feel more comfortable than having a full lobby. And the only other thing that I think is really going to change is that my board will start going back to regular board meetings. We've been doing Zoom meetings for those, and they've been very antsy to get back to regular board meetings. So that will begin in June as well.
Do we have any other questions, Katie?
We do. We have another one, and this one I believe goes to Darcy. Are there any fears around the government not living up to the promises regarding the CARES Act that you're concerned about?
Oh, that's a hard
That
one.
has to come from Ravalli
Definitely.
County, right?
Yeah. Seriously, there's so much with the CARES Act, and there's so many things going on. We were not SBA approved for the PPP lending, so we were not a part of that. Danya will probably actually know more than that, because I knew when that came through on the CARES Act that was going to be very, very difficult for anybody who was doing SBA lending at the time, and especially for credit unions who were trying to sign up with SBA. I did SBA lending when I worked at a community bank, so I know there's a lot to that. There's so much to how the banks and credit unions are going to, if they're going to get the funds, if the loans are going to be forgiven, if it's going to be at 1%. I'm reading all of it, and it just sounds like it's very scary. It's scary to me. It should be. I think it's scary to everybody. It should be.
We've
Even
got
if I'm
about
not
four
involved in it,
minutes
it's scary
left.
to me.
Danya, any quick comments on that?
I'll just comment quickly that, I think that everyone is committed to trying to make sure that this all goes as planned. And as Darcy said, there's a lot of anxiety around the loan forgiveness. Nobody's worked harder in this last couple months than the 3 individuals at Montana's SBA office. They've been amazing.
Yeah.
Supporting our 13 credit unions doing those types of loans. And, it is challenging when you have a giant government agency trying to administer a program. They're doing their best, and we're just hopeful. And I'll tell you that our congressional delegation is all really committed to making sure that works too. So we have their back as well.
Yeah, and I would just add that don't fall into the trap of, how politicized this all is. I would echo exactly my experience has been, and lots of other business owners, there's wonderful people working hard to make the best of a very difficult situation. So trust what you
Focus
have
on the
experienced.
positives. Focus on the positives. So yeah, I'd just like to put up the association resources here.
Always happy to send you to our website. And
yes, if you want to speak on that, Danya. Yeah. Also,
there's a lot there, and like I said, I spent probably a solid 6 weeks just putting information every hour on the COVID website. So we are still keeping it up to date. It's
you
just
probably
the
tripled the size of your website.
Well, the information has slowed down slightly, or maybe we've gotten better at focusing. But yeah, there's a lot out there, and from the fraud perspective, as Darcy said, continues. It's been a big week for unemployment fraud coming in on the ACH. So we always encourage people to start there or give us a call.
All righty. Well, I want to thank all the panelists today for taking the time, both Danya and Darcy. We appreciate all the information. Also, I'd like to put up some technology resources here. If you guys need any help, any advice, you can always call us at First Call. There's me and Meg, who's also a business development executive, and Connor, as you guys have already met today. We do have
3 resources here that I wanted to touch on real quick. The first one is that COVID guide. And we've all seen this recovery guide that's out there. And so we put together a performance guide more around technology. And so if you're going into that planning, what's left in 2020, that might be a good resource for you from a technology standpoint to kind of frame where are we and where are we going. The next one is around Microsoft Teams. So it's 6 ways Microsoft Teams can boost your operations. You know, Zoom is a good meeting application, but that's not what Microsoft Teams is. That's part of what Teams does. And so if you don't understand Teams and it's more of a buzzword to you, that's a very good, short, but educational guide, you know, that you can download and take a look at. And then the last one is if phone systems have been kind of a barrier, you know, to your operations during this time, you know, there's a link to our website, phonesystemsmontana.com. Might be a good resource too. Any closing words, Danya, Darcy?
Okay,
No.
How
well,
about let's all have a good 3-day
Everyone
weekend.
enjoys their well-earned
yeah.
day off on Monday.
I like it.
I don't think there'll be as much travel, but let's try to enjoy ourselves. It is our time to say goodbye. I just want to thank you guys again. Thank Connor for taking the time. I know everyone is busy. And hopefully you guys can help navigate through the rest of this thing successfully.
Yeah, let's
Thank
get
you.
better.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.